guys, welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we'll take a look at some new entitled people content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
The first story is titled, Builder Felled Trees on Our Property Line. A builder who owns the land opposite to our housing estate felled 10 trees that were on our property. These were 30-feet trees that blocked our view into the land next to us. There were clear property line markers and the trees lay behind a fence. So in order our houses, the fence, our trees, the property line, his property. He admitted to accidentally felling these trees and emailed me to say he would replace them within 6 weeks. Then COVID happened. Now we get a semi-threatening letter saying that the Northern Ireland, hedge laws of 2012 could lead to us being complained to the local authorities and be responsible for damages if the trees he replants grow to block the sunlight of the houses he is about to build. He gave us 3 options. 1. Replant the conifer trees, the ones he cut. 2. Replant deciduous trees, his preference. 3. No action. What is the best course of action here? This is Northern Ireland law. Update. Got a lot of messages asking for updates. A lot has happened. I spent weeks speaking to solicitors and local councillors. I personally wrote a response letter addressing the letter we received. I used solicitors' advice to write it and demanded the replacement of the trees like for like. I am happy to say the builder contacted us and has offered to replace the trees up to 12 feet tall for logistical reasons and would compensate us for the remaining 8 feet per tree. He also stipulated he will not build until 2 years from now to ensure the trees mature. I was pleasantly surprised that I even got a response, never mind one with a reasonable response. The next story is titled, Neighbor Extends Driveway onto Our Property. Admits fault and does nothing. Note. In the province of Ontario, the only legal and recognized land surveyor is an Ontario Land Surveyor, OLS. Your brother-in-law who knows how to work a transit just isn't qualified. I moved from the Toronto area back up north in 2007. In 2008 we bought a home on a 4-acre forested lot from the original owner. Through conversations with the original owner I remembered him muttering something about how the neighbor to the north had their driveway awful close to the property line. I thought no more about it until later that fall. Our neighbor's house was built slab on grade and the builder must have messed up or not properly installed any drainage for the gravel pad. Every time it rained they had water into their ground floor, an inconvenience to say the least. But, not my problem. That is, until the neighbor rented an excavator and had a deep ditch dug all along our side of his driveway, dumping all of rocks and spoil from the excavation onto our property. We also lost a number of trees, this all mature black maple sugar bush trees. I was getting concerned. We had problems with a jerk neighbor in Toronto and ended up having to get a survey and put up a fence. I wasn't going to lose any sleep worrying about it this time. Call for a surveyor and get this over with. It turns out the OLS firm I called were the ones who surveyed the development when it was built 10 years earlier. They had no trouble mapping out how and where the neighbor's driveway for over 100 feet now arced up to 12 feet onto our property. Never mind the rocks and dirt in the bush beyond that. I sent a registered letter with a copy of the survey and a polite letter to our neighbor. With registered you have to sign to pick it up. They received it, but did not respond. I waited a month and then sent another registered letter. That one wasn't picked up and was returned to me. Yeah, that should work. If I don't receive the letter everything will just go away. In way of explanation, the neighbor was a successful local businessman and in smaller communities some of them tend to think that they're a bit special, and can make their own rules. I learned from the jerk neighbor in Toronto that there's not much point trying to discuss things personally. We have a system, let's use it. The next letter that's sent to them is from our real estate law firm. They know the right language to use and how to get someone's attention. Surprise! That one not only gets picked up but we receive a letter from their lawyer. They freely admit that they're at fault and will make everything right. Except they don't. They don't do anything, for the next 3 years. Absolutely nothing. I starting receiving expert advice from some of my friends. SJK, you should fix it at your own cost and then sue them for that amount. Well, what if they claim they could have fixed it a lot cheaper, or I did a bunch of things that weren't needed? SJK, you should charge them for all the trees they cut down and make them replace them. Yeah, But we do live in the forest and trees aren't really hard to find. In fact, we cut down trees that get too big too close to the house. It's not like we're in the big city. I decide to do nothing. After the angst and sleepless nights with the jerks in Toronto, I decide to just wait it out. After all, they've admitted fault through their lawyer. It's not like they can wiggle out of that one or change their minds. I learn that the neighbor's wife hates living in the forest and would much rather have a schmancy house in town. And with the water problem that has never been resolved, it just isn't as much fun as they had thought it would be. 4 years later, what I was waiting for. A realtor's for sale sign in front of their house. I stop and take a picture of the sign so that I have the phone number of the listing agent. I call them as soon as I get to work. Hi, this is SJK. I see you're listing a property at XXX. You may not be aware of this, but your client is trespassing on my property. Of course, the neighbor can't pretend this isn't true, and now we have to clean up the mess to our satisfaction before the property can be sold. Oh my. The 5-yard dump trucks ran for close to 3 weeks. They hauled load after load after load of topsoil. It had to be dumped, spread out and compacted. The gravel driveway had to be dug up and pulled back to the property line, and all that filled in as well. At the end it was all seeded with the understanding that it will eventually go back to being forest. SJK, is it okay now? Not quite yet, it looks like there's still a lot of work to do. All the weeping tile, rocks and piles of dirt were removed as well. Not a job easily done and very time-consuming. Don't get mad. Wait, then get even. The next story is titled, My Homeowner Association is a Joke. So when my mom and I moved to the neighborhood we currently live in 8 years ago, we really didn't even know that it had an homeowner association. There are no fees, aside from an optional road fee that a good chunk of people don't pay for reasons I'll get into. First, when we moved, the homeowner association seemed normal. Sure, there was drama, but our neighborhood is full of older people that have been here for probably decades, so whatever. It wasn't until we had been living here for maybe 3 years when it was time to get the roads repaired. The president of the homeowner association didn't get the roads properly fixed. Instead, he spent hundreds of road fee money to repair his driveway and the road in front of his house. That was a huge issue that ultimately nothing happened with it, but it's why some people stopped paying. Cue new board of directors. With the current president, which I find a bit weird because we have rules that only homeowners can be on the board and she isn't a homeowner. She's caused a lot of problems, even to the point where she's openly admitted to being afraid of my mother. Fair point. Don't make her mad. She wanted to take people to court over chickens, which she ended up letting people have. Also, she owns the water company. Our neighborhood has well water and she owns that, and people have brown water or seriously chlorinated water. I could tell more stories, but I can't remember any. Thank you for letting me rant. Edit. To clarify just a tiny bit about the water stuff. I've been told by a few people that the water is just the way it is sometimes because of the wells, but when it legit stains bathtubs, dentures, anything that has extended use with it, it's just gross. It isn't always brown. I'd say it only really goes brown once in a while. It's usually more on the smells heavily of chlorine side, so my household uses jugged water instead of tap whenever we can. The next story is titled, Moral/Legal Car Question. Putting this in off topic because I'm not sure it'd qualify strictly as legal. Our one running vehicle, a small truck, is not conducive to a toddler's car seat. A few times my daughter has let me use her car for the 3 or 4 day duration of babysitting our granddaughter. Previously, the only problem I had with this car was a blown tire fixed via roadside assistance. This last time was unfortunately different. It's about an hour to her house and I was driving granddaughter there. About 15 minutes in, she had a sudden screaming fit. I pulled off the road and left the engine idling while I comforted her and changed her diaper. Noticed temp gauge at 2/3 instead of 1/2 per usual, but wrote it off to idling time. Drive the rest of the way there, temp goes back down to 1/2 and stays there for a rural drive with no stopping. Within 2 miles of her home I had to stop at a light. Temp gauge flies up to 3/4 and rising as soon as I stop. I've driven a litany of POS cars over the years and I know the drill. Stop now, pull over, and let car cool for 10 to 20 minutes. Do this twice until I reach a store, and radiator drinks over 1/2 of a container of antifreeze I buy. Idling is fine, temp stays at its normal 1/2. As I make the turn down daughter's road, engine suddenly sounds a lot louder but temp stays the same. Tell daughter, she starts car and hears it too. Shuts car down until it can be looked at by her mechanic. Only then does she tell me, I was supposed to be watching the fluids carefully. The radiator has a small leak. To make matters even more uncomfortable, her mechanic is her father, my ex, who says I have killed her car. It needs a new radiator, guess way before now, but the engine is now blown. Your mother killed your car, was said. I feel awful this happened. Part of me feels that it happened on my watch and I'm responsible. Having my ex say I killed it doesn't help much either. It's a 12 to 15-year-old car with 180k miles on it. The other half of me feels that daughter is responsible for not telling me anything about radiator problems. That's why as this ethics or morality came into play when I decided to post to get a general consensus. I looked up the Kelly Blue Book for her car, and trade-in value was $880. Should I offer half? I've always had a wonderful relationship with my daughter and son-in-law, and I don't want to strain that. It would be a struggle, but I could come up with the money. Other family members have said that it was gonna happen whether I was driving or not, and I'm only so sensitive about it due to my ex, and that I need to stop worrying. Non-sugar-coated advice would be extremely helpful here. Any legal standpoints or ethical, moral views would be appreciated. Update. I took the advice of everyone who posted, and offered to give her $300, which we thought was fair considering the KBB of the car. I got a text back from her I'd like to share with y'all since you were all so wonderful to help me sort out my thought process on this. I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable. And I appreciate the offer to help. We just haven't been able to have it, professionally, looked at yet to find out what's wrong. And there's nothing to fix here but the car. You didn't do anything wrong, it just happened. You're still my mama, I love you, and if you ever needed to borrow my car again I'd let you because you are my mama, so stop worrying about that. Nobody is upset with you personally, just the frustrations that come with having one car. Between you all being so understanding and helpful, and that text, yeah, I got weepy. Thanks guys, really. The last story is titled, Leased House Delivered Day of Rent Needing Work Done, Strong Smell of Mold and Mildew, Dangling Light Fixtures, etc. with pictures. Where do I stand in terms of the lease? Florida. So my day has been downright horrible. I'm active duty military that stupidly signed a lease for a house, sight unseen, and I think this is going to cost me. Movers get there same time my wife does, and next thing I know, she is calling me bawling her eyes out. The house is in pretty poor order, and that's coming from someone who's rented in college towns. Now, I'm not there with her because I'm stuck 1,200 miles away for the next 10 days, so I'm feeling like a pretty poor husband. We end up having the movers put everything back in the truck and move it into storage. Over the phone, the landlord sounded reasonable and agreed to return my deposit and pre-rent paid. Later he messaged me saying I needed to stick to the contract. I sent him pictures of everything we found. He keeps saying, oh, I'm having painter come back out this day, I'm having the plumber come out that day. The same is true for the AC unit guy and the cleaning people who he is just having come out today. Don't you think you should clean a house before someone moves in? In our eyes, this should have been done before we got there, and we just want to wash our hands of the whole event. Can anyone on here give me an insight as where we would stand in breaking this lease? Update. Landlord delivered house in disrepair. He is offering to let us out of the lease but not return deposit. Should I pursue code violations further or cut my losses? Yesterday I wrote about what a miserable experience my family had when they arrived with the moving company to the house we signed to leased. Basically, the house was in terrible condition and my wife was just in tears. After going a little back and forth, we had the moving company pack everything back up and place it in storage. Talk about a tough decision and position to be in. I emailed and mailed via certified mail a letter outlining various building code violations found on the premises, and it seems to have changed his tone a bit. He is now asking for a letter of cancellation and the keys. He did not say how this cancellation would look financially. We put down a pretty hefty deposit. $6,850. First plus last plus security deposit plus pet deposit. I'm looking for guidance on whether I should continue to push the coding violations and attempt to recoup some of our expenses or just cut our losses and get on with our lives. Update 2. Landlord let me out of lease after 18 days. Came up with random amount to return as deposit. TLDR, house was a mess. Various code violations. Sent certified letter of needed repairs and also follow-up letter from my attorney asking out of lease and for deposit back. Landlord fixed majority of complaints, but there were still some obvious repairs needed. lost faith in landlord and asked to be let out of lease. He obliged but came up with a random number of $1,000 to return to us after receiving the keys. Total amount given, $6,850, base rent $2,200 two times, $250 pet and $2,200 security deposit. Never received a letter stating why he was not returning at least our security deposit. Any advice on where I stand if I took this to small claims? Update 3. Successfully sued landlord for deposit and won. TLDR. Landlord delivered house in disrepair. Never moved into house. Landlord let me out of lease after 18 days but wouldn't return my last month's rent, security deposit, and pet deposit $4,650 total. Filed a small claim against the landlord. Hired a process server to deliver claim. Roughly 30 days later we met for mediation, which was unsuccessful. Another 30 days later we met before the small claims judge and successfully argued my case. The judge ruled in my favor for the full amount and gave them 60 days to pay the ruling. I messaged the landlord today notifying them that today was the due date. He hastily deposited the amount with confirmation sent to me. All in all, I'm happy the whole ordeal is over and I can wash my hands of the mess. I just wanted to update my post on here to show others that they too can follow through with the whole process and right where they have been wrong. Thanks for the help r/legal advice. Thanks for listening.